I have such a special guest. I'm gonna pause. I mean, I cannot believe this person agreed to talk to me. I'm beyond thrilled and nervous, actually.
It's already started.
I hope I'm gonna make a fool of myself. We have the great Tim Reilly. Those of you who have been coming to Epac for a while will remember him and this outstanding productions that he did for us, including Jesus Christ Superstar and Urinetown, until he decided he was better than us and abandoned us, left us. So, but he's
It's exactly how it happened. Hey, everyone, by the way.
Hey, brother, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
We miss you. We miss you so much.
Oh, you have no idea.
For those of you who don't know, Tim, how you were transferred, right? Your job. It was your job. Yes. Tim was a pharmaceutical salesman even when he first came to us, but his region was.
Yeah, it was Lancaster. That was I had just recently fallen into that industry, and the good news was my father was very excited that I finally got a real job, and so I got the call that I would be in pharmaceuticals, and I knew nothing. I was ignorant, and they said, "So we want you to come work for us," and I said, "Well, cool. Sounds good." And I asked 0 questions. I was like, "Hey, do I get benefits?" I'm in, because I was an actor. And they said, "Yeah, that's great." And they said, "So the one last thing before you hang up is we're sending you to Lancaster, Pennsylvania." And at the time, all I knew about Lancaster was I had visited. My family went there once a year growing up, and we would do the Amish visits. So I wasn't quite sure what to do. So I went to training for work, and I went out there, and that's what brought me there. But it was my first job, and I lived in Lidditz on, I think it was called the Highland Estates, I think it was, right there in Lidditz. And then I was there, and I figured it all out from there, and I was there a good 6 years. But it ended up to be the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow. And then you were transferred, right, up toward Philly, correct?
I was transferred. So so that was my first job there. And then I think it was 2000 and the end of 2009, I got transferred to Philadelphia.
And then you became a manager from a salesman, and that really took up a lot of your time.
So exactly. So I think that was I started traveling for work in 2000, I think 13.
Oh, wow. So you came to Epac, and I'll let you tell the story, which you love to tell to embarrass me. But I will let you tell it. Your first Epac experience.
Okay, so I came to Epac, and I knew nothing about the area, like I just said, and I get there, and I had been doing a lot of theater. That's what I did coming out of college, and so it's like anybody who knows theater, it's when it's in your blood, it's in your blood. So I said I got to figure out a way on top of my new job to exercise that creative side. So I hear about this esteemed Edward R. Fernandez, and I said, I got to meet this guy. So I make my way up to Ephrata Playhouse, and I walk in, and I remember I walk in, and I was
You didn't
escorted
send me anything
back.
first? Did you call me, or did you just pop in cold?
No, I called the box office, and they said, Edward he has agreed to meet with you, and I'm just kidding. So I walked up to the office, and they escorted me back to the office, and I said, "Hey, my name's Tim Reilly, and I just moved to the area, and I see you do a lot of theater, and I live not too far from here, and I would love to just be a part of your theater in any way possible." And you put your hand up like that, and you said, "Before you go any further, let me just tell you, this is not just any community theater." And you stopped me in my tracks, and you brought me in the next day and put me through the audition from hell. Unfortunately, you called me and said, "I'm going to give you a shot."
And one of the reasons was that you looked strikingly like an actor who had no longer worked for us, who had sort of, I'm trying to be polite about this, you shouldn't know the name, but had a hefty reputation.
Yes.
So that was also part of it too. We were like,
yeah.
But surprised. I'm surprised you didn't give me the finger and walk out. I really.
I was a little intimidated. I mean,
Well, you know what? Usually, you were younger then, and usually good looks and talent don't go together in this business. So I wanted, wanted to make sure.
so who are we talking about?
I wanted I wanted to soften the blow in case you were just a pretty face and I could use you. But, however, did I have that role open at Sweet Charity? Was I waiting to cast it? Because I put you right into Sweet Charity, right?
Yeah. So what had happened was there was another person cast. So whatever it was, Ed, I think the timing was such that it just opened up.
Yeah.
And you were like, you said you're a little young to do this role, but we'll do it. I think because that was your one hesitation. You said, I don't know that you're really this guy, but we'll try you out.
And you were. Little did I know. So what audition from hell did I give you? I have no recollection of this.
No, it wasn't an audition.
Oh.
It was, you had me come in and sing, but we didn't know each other. Obviously, it was like 24 hours of knowing Ed, and everybody knows you're like the Bill Belichick of theater. I mean, if you were to say in a football, like I've always called you that. We used to joke about that. I know you're not a huge sports guy, but Bill Parcells was like someone who you were hard. So if you didn't know you had this look. So when I sang for you, you looked at me. You have such a poker face that I was terrified. I mean, I was melting down during my whole 16 bars. And then when I was finished, I forget what you asked me, but when it was done, you asked me a few questions and then you just went, "Thank you very much. We'll let you know." And I went home and I think,
I can't believe I was so mean to you.
You didn't know me. It was 24 hours. I think you were trying to just decide if I was a total jerk. And we've found out through 16 years I'm just sort of a jerk.
It's funny you say, because I do in another dimension, in another world, I'm probably a football coach because the way I direct is sort of like a football coach.
Yeah, even the motivation. I mean, everyone's psyche. The way you get into one person. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but I mean, the way you get into people's minds, whether it's, the stories I used to hear prior to my time about Sean Young and how you used to you brought him, he was out on the bench outside and you just laid into him and he wanted that. And then with me, Ed, I remember intermissions, if I was beating myself up, because it's pretty hard on myself, you come down and be like, "Nah, you got it. But then if I felt good and you sensed in my body language, I felt good about how things were going, you walked by me very casually and went, eh.
Well, I did do one of these with Sean Young, and he told all the war stories, so that's cool.
Oh,
but as a director, people respond in different ways. People respond in different ways. Like I've dealt with guys, I find this with some men, that you've got to be tough. That's how they respond. Like no pain, no gain.
Right.
They need to be. They like it when you're tough and you yell at them and you really go. They like that. They respond to that. They think they're working. Other people, they fall apart. So you really have to know. So anyway, you found up with so many of the Epac. You were just among the Epac regulars because that was Christy O's first show. She was an understudy. Yes, it was supposed to be Andy Jo Hill. Hi, Andy. And Andy couldn't do it because of her other job.
Okay.
And so Christy was supposed to be the Cheetah Rivera role. So Christy was pushed into Charity. So that was Christy's first leading role in a musical. She had done a play in a musical.
Wow.
So you were with KO in her first big musical. Oh.
Yeah. So prior to that show, you tell me you have to come to our show to see how we work and why we're not just any theater, and you'll get the gist of what I'm talking about. Get the gist, friend?
I could not have been that insufferable.
No. It was, it becomes it becomes myth-like over the years. But what happened is I show up and the show is 1776. And the first words I hear from an Epac performer come from Sean Young's mouth.
Oh, wow.
And I immediately am like, well, I mean, well, crap. I mean, I can't do this. So, and then during Sweet Charity, I go and I see, because I think they always just overlap. So while we're rehearsing, I would go up and I saw the show, and it's Jonathan Groff in Bat Boy, and I'm like, well, is everybody in the state of, like, in the city of Lancaster and Ephrata like Broadway quality? So that was my introduction to Ephrata. And then when I went into Sweet Charity, such a great cast. And then I'll never forget, Lakeisha and Liz were attached at the hip, and they used to come into rehearsals. And they looked at me like, who is this guy and what is he doing here? So I had to once I earned their trust, I knew I was accepted by the crew.
So after Sweet Charity, now, what else? You went from show to show to show, right?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it was always a bit of a balance. I did several more per year in the beginning, but I think I did Sweet Charity. That was 2004. 2005, I did Sweeney Todd and Little Shop, which was great. And I love Sondheim. I had done Sweeney Todd in college, but this was like whole new level with that cast, and that was fantastic. And then that was 2005, and 2006 was like, for me, because that was Urinetown. And to me, that was, to this day, my family still talks about that show. They drove from Philadelphia, I think each one of them 4 times to see that show, because the cast every single person in the cast was just amazing. And then it was greater than the sum of its parts. So synergistically, the cast was just so talented and the great people. We had so much fun. I probably shouldn't admit this, somewhere in the world, Chris Smith is going to come get me, but I have the Bobby Strong Memorial Toilet Authority. I have that big circular thing in my basement. So I have that from that show. So that was incredible. I would say still up there in a top experience for me. So much fun.
And the interesting thing of that show, that was a real surprise hit, because I don't know if you remember, had no advance sale. People still didn't know what that Urinetown. Ooh, what is that? Ooh,
right.
And we didn't. We thought it was going to be a major flop because we were taking a chance. People did not know of that show. They were put off by the title, except if you were a New York theater person. We opened with a preview, and then the rest of the run sold out in like 48 hours. Like, I had never had a show like that, where the word of mouth so strong. I think we were almost sold out before the reviews came out. And once the reviews came out, it was just like boom, 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 it was gone. And another memory of that show that has to do with you was closing night audiences. It's weird. Epac, everybody says Friday night audiences are bad, Saturday audiences are bad. I don't know about other theaters, but that's Epac. Our Friday night audiences are always wild. They are wild. Yeah. Our Saturday night audiences are usually good audiences, but sometimes they can be very not verbal. You know how an audience is not verbal? They're not demonstrative, but they're very, very good audience. But sometimes they're a mellow audience, and they love it at the end. But we were doing Urinetown. It was the last show on a Saturday night, and it just was not getting the laughs that we were used to.
Right.
Because we were used to these huge laughs on the top of the show. And it was not getting, it was getting polite response. You walk by me, right? And you're going to make your way on stage, up the stairs. And, if you don't know Epac, I'm in the aisle. There's stairs here that go up, and then you can walk down on stage to what we call the north section. So I'm watching in the aisle, and I'm like, oh, man, And you walk, and you say, they're not going to ruin my closing. They're not going to ruin my closing night. And you walked up, and the funny thing, Reilly, is that scene you did, it was the first thing you and Kathy Robb brought down the house. You were like, they're going to laugh if I have to kill every one of them.
Oh, my gosh.
And then it was one of the great, and that's the one we have on tape. That became one of the greatest performances. By the second act, they were stopping numbers. Remember,
Yep.
the number you have in the
Oh,
get that girl.
Baby Run or something. Freedom,
Freedom Run.
Run, Freedom, Run.
Run would stop that. As the next show, when are we getting a Superstar? Was Superstar next?
No, so let's see. So I think after that, because that was 2006. I want to say, geez, was it South Pacific maybe? 2007. And yeah, I mean, there's so many shows. And then oh yeah, we also forgot Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
Oh.
You know,
yeah, that started the make Reilly take his shirt off phase of your career.
Oh yeah, that was true. That was like, you know, you get someone in their heyday at 25 years old, and then you come back 10 years later. And I'm like, hey Ed, you want to see me without my shirt? And you're like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. No, but that was a great show too. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, I think
South Pacific, yeah.
South Pacific, that was a good show. And then I think I think the next one might have been Superstar, because Superstar was like July of 2008, I think. Summer show. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was right before Streetcar. Yeah, right, so Superstar. Yeah.
Superstar and Streetcar the same season. I don't know. I could.
Yeah, they were. No, they were. It was July was Superstar, and Streetcar was like September, October.
That was a great year then. That was those two shows back to back. It was great.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, Superstar obviously was another cast that was just incredible, and also another example of what I look to you as when I think back to our time working together, is you always would give you a chance to do something that you didn't feel like you could do. Because I had already been in Superstar. I mean, granted, it was like years prior, but that role was something that I would have never pegged myself to do, because it's just vocally, it wasn't something. And and you were very confident, even if maybe to yourself you weren't quite that confident. You at least instilled that in me, that I could bring something different to it. So that ended up being a really incredible experience because of the whole cast again, because right. Everyone came together. And then obviously Sean was director of that, and I looked to Sean because he had done it so many times, and so it was a lot of pressure, but one of the most rewarding, I think, that I have been a part of. I remember that night, Ed, when my worlds collided, where I have this fear of like making a commitment to a show. That's why sometimes I teeter on saying I can do a show, because we've always known that about each other. It's like, well, don't say you're going to do it if you can't do it. So I remember that was probably the only time at this point where I'd said I was all in, and then something happened with work that I absolutely could not miss, and it was performance. So I don't think I slept for a week. And then I finally had the nerve to come and talk with you and Sean, and I'll never forget, and it was the right thing to do. You said, well, that's fine, but you're going to go tell the cast. And that was like the hardest thing. It was the right thing to do because we were already so tight. But I remember having a really difficult time telling them, because with theater, you work, you're collective. It's not one person's performance. It's someone else is working hard, and you benefit, and vice versa. So the ensemble was in it, and saying that, it was really hard. And I remember being away for that trip for work and texting with Sean the whole time. And he's like texting me like, so do I go stage right for this line, or where? And we're doing blocking notes across the country. But yeah, no, I mean, hey, look, if your backup is Sean Young, then I think the theater's in pretty good hands.
Yeah. And yeah, but as you know, the show was built for you, and
Yeah.
There were some scenes, that were specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the case for any show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Streetcar, which was for me one of the greatest experiences.
Streetcar.
So intense. Such an intense rehearsal period. Oh my God. Do you remember the talks after rehearsal that lasted as long as the rehearsal?
Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
unbelievable.
It was like free therapy.
Yep.
I mean,
We just delved into that show. And you
and
remember?
yeah, it was so incredible. And I'm not sure about Christy. I mean, Christy's obviously she's done everything in terms of straight plays and musicals. But at that time, I'm not sure if she had done any plays. But I remember for me, I'd only done one play in college. I did All Wilderness, but it was not to that level of in depth, so Streetcar for me, I'd never been an experience like that. And I remember you talking to me about the part. And when I auditioned for it and you said, hey, we think you might be able to do it, I definitely didn't think I could do that because I just, from what I had seen in the past and the acting chops of people that had played it, I always considered myself more of a musical guy, and it was lighthearted. I did Urinetown, and I remember you saying, look, there's a certain element of humor which I never connected with Stanley, and that was one of those examples where I trusted you more than I trusted my own instincts. I'm like, all right, well, if Ed thinks I can do it, I'm in, because I knew you wouldn't be afraid to say you can't do this one. And then when we did it, the experience was great because everyone was so on their A game. I mean, you, KO was just unreal. Liz, it was incredible. And I remember you saying how much you all hated me during that because the show, that's what the appetite was for the show, was that the character of Stanley was so just repulsive. So if everyone was doing their jobs, you probably wouldn't like me.
Performance didn't come off as repulsive at all. And no, I'm very, very serious. Pat Powder, may she rest in peace, said that you were the only Stanley that made her cry at the end.
Oh.
So no, you might. We all got very intense during that show. I remember getting everybody got just intense. That's the best way to put it. Our reactions were intense. Our conversations were intense. There was this intense energy that surrounded everybody in that show because of the show. It was unbelievable. And then you did that, and then you did after that.
Let's see, that was 2000. Oh, you know what? I left right after that. That was towards the end of 2008. And then the next show I did actually was July of 2010, which was Rent.
Oh.
Yeah. And that was another one where
do you remember? This is my memories of Rent. There's a lot of memories of Rent. A lot of memories.
Yes.
Do you remember how uptight I got about the rehearsal schedule? Because you were in Philly, and you could only give me a certain amount of, and you had to talk me down. Because I was like, we can't do it. We can't do it with them. I need more rehearsal. I can't do it. You're like, do it.
Yeah.
No change. I'm like, 2 weeks to get it up. Fine, we'll do it. But yeah, that was extraordinary. That was extraordinary too.
That we kind of together. I remember in the beginning, and so often this is the case until things come together and the cast and you get to know the cast. But I remember early on you were kind of like, you know what it was, Ed? You weren't sure about the show, if I recall correctly. You're like, I think you said, I need to feel a show to really feel that passion to drive it. And right now I'm not there yet. Now this is May. This is 2 or 3 months before. And I remember you telling me that. And then when we started getting into it, we got very close during that because I lived in Philly and I ended up commuting. And then I think Thursday through Monday, I crashed at your apartment. And we talked endless hours about the cast and like just and you're like, I'm feeling this cast is good, like this is awesome, and Ponce has got it, like, and so I remember it was all there. We used to go to Weiss food store at midnight after every rehearsal, and we would just get as much food as we can, and then we'd come home and Boomer would stalk me.
Frat boy living for a while.
Oh yeah. And you know what? Hey, Ed, do you remember, because let's face it, I don't think I'm exactly a Roger in terms of like the vibe, feeling it. And you had me watch that movie with
Velvet Goldmine. Is it Velvet
yeah,
Goldmine? Yeah.
yes, yes. And you're trying to tell me I just got to like feel the movement.
You were
And
very, yeah, you were very good. I told you couldn't work out because you had to look like you were dying of AIDS. Remember
yeah,
that?
yeah. So I just came out of Superstar, and back then I spent a lot of time at the gym. I had too much time on my hands. And you said you got to stop the protein and you got to lose about 30 pounds. You're addicted to drugs and you're a very sick man. And
Would you mind talking about your mother and Ren? Because that was a very emotional time for you.
yeah, so that was 2010. So rewinding like 6 months, my mom had been sick. But we thought she had gotten through it. She had cancer. And that was December of 2009. So that was good. And, so after that point, I think around that point we had discussed potentially, there were early auditions. It was general auditions in January. So we had already gone through that. And then she wasn't feeling that well in February or March. And I remember she went to the doctors and she got the call right, I think it was May 1st, 2010, because we had met in Downingtown for something for my aunt. And she told me that it was back and it was pretty bad. So we kind of knew, I found out that first day of rehearsal that, it was going to be a rough go of it. So I remember seeing you, Ed, coming. You were the first person I told, because she told me on the way out to my car where we were, and then I drove to Lancaster and went to the first rehearsal, and you were out in the parking lot, and I remember telling you, it was a lot, but I remember that first rehearsal, I think I was a little out of it. But like anything else, anybody who's involved in any type of art, it ended up being sort of like a therapy to kind of deal with that. And my mom, I remember asking my mom, should I just not go to this rehearsal? Like, I don't need to do this show if we're talking what you're dealing with. And she obviously, all moms know your kids. And she's like, you got to do this. So we went, and it was good. It was hard. It was especially the subject matter of Ren. It's not exactly the same, but I'll tell you, she managed, and she was in pretty bad shape. She managed to make it out, I think, a couple times to see that show in July. And I remember Rent was not her cup of tea in general. Like she loved Superstar. She loved theater. I used to take her every year. She would give me a ticket to a show, and she could say, you could take whoever you want. But I was young. I was just dating, and I don't know. I was like, I'm going to take you. You'll be around, Mom. I don't know what's going to happen if I take you. So you're my mainstay. So she was very into theater, but that show she wasn't. But then when she saw Ephrata's, she loved it. And I remember like that second time she saw it, she's like, you've never sounded better. Now, she may have been a good mom then and just said that knowing what she was going through. But that was the last time she saw me perform, because she passed away that October 30th following. So, that was a tough year, but Rent was definitely the highlight of all that.
It turned out to be a very a beautiful experience. And then the next show you did was Assassins, right?
Yeah, this is when it was a challenge, because when I look back, it was a 3-year gap. But it's so hard to say goodbye, like Boyz II Men says. And I would talk to you all the time, Eddie, and we used to kind of tease out like, well, maybe I can work something out, or what are you doing next year? And it just, by the time it just got harder and harder and harder. But Assassins was the next show that worked out, and I think that was 2013.
And it worked out because of the nature you were the balladeer, and you weren't doubling as John Wilkes Booth.
That's right.
Not John Wilkes Booth. I'm sorry.
Lee Harvey.
Lee Harvey Oswald. We got Alex Bannister, Lee Harvey Oswald. So you only had the balladeer, so you fit it in your schedule.
Yeah.
You didn't really interact with anybody else.
No, it was just a handful of songs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was great. Sondheim, and it was just another classic experience of just everyone, obviously the talent was around. And that was, well, no, I'd worked with Sean during South Pacific, but Sean and I hadn't had the opportunity to work together too much. So I remember being very excited to work with Sean again. There were a couple shows I always think of as like, in my mind at least, I mean, the shows always turn out being amazing at Ephrata. So I would say they're missed opportunities for me. But, you know, I remember after the Rent, we talked about when you were thinking of doing Sunday, which to this day remains something I would love to do. And that, and it worked out because I think at the time you weren't sure who was going to audition for it. And then it worked out that Sean was able to audition, and it was phenomenal. But that was one of them that I remember miss. And then the other one I couldn't because of work. I couldn't even audition for was Next to Normal. And I did see it, which again was amazing. So there's a couple things that I remember just, you know, you think of the ones that you couldn't do, but I look back probably 14 or 15 shows that there is so many great experiences. You know, you and I have talked about the balance in life, right? You want to have your job, you want to do that, but then it's like, if it's in you, it's in you. I miss it constantly. I would, anything I could do, I still, in my mind, like fantasize about figuring out ways to come back to Ephrata. It's maybe if I stop traveling at some point, but I miss it like crazy. Never goes away, really, from my standpoint.
Well, Tim, we miss you so much. Yeah, I always hope you can come back. I remember I still want to do Passion with you. That was, I always wanted to do, I was always trying to do Passion, but
that's right.
I want to do it with you as Giorgio. And
I would love that.
I really would love to do Passion, but then it's like, I'm always trying to finagle away, like, you know, it's only 90 minutes and rehearsals.
You know what it is, Ed? You know what it is? We make these like, you know, agreements, and then it's like when you get into the heat of the rehearsals, and if something's not going right, it's like, I need you here.
No, I'm very good at what is it, acknowledging contracts, acknowledging agreements. I would just make.
Oh, you definitely honor them. No doubt.
I would, but I still haven't given up on you, Reilly. I'm still not giving up working with you again.
Don't ever give up. I miss it. I don't want you to.
Love working with you. And I know a lot of people at Theater Builders.
Well,
like just a hiatus.
Oh, that's hey. I think, you know, the feeling's mutual, because when did I moved 10 years ago back to Philly, and I'm back probably a couple times a year. I mean, you'll see me pop in, and, you know, I'll be at the show, or I'll go to the Hilltop, and it's like, to me at least, I feel like I never left. Like, I miss you guys so much. I'm getting old. You always want to get together like 11 o'clock. Hey, brother, can we go out and drink? And I'm like, oh, man, I'm in bed. Well, what do you used to call me? An Irishman? Yeah. You know how it is. It runs in my blood. Oh, my gosh.
But so you have a kid now.
I do.
Yeah.
He's incredible. He is, well, what time is it? He's in bed right now, but he is awesome. And I will say, and I think maybe we didn't get there yet. I'm trying to think, but no, I don't think we talked about the situation we're in now with COVID. But I will say, as challenging as it is and how terrible as it is, the silver lining is that I'm with him like every day. Like I travel every week. And he's
your job, you were traveling, and now you're at home, which we had talked about before we started recording. That
it's unbelievable. I mean, he's amazing. He's really happy, and I don't know. It's too young to tell. He's only 14 months old, but he seems to be musical. So I don't know. He's like got the little. He snaps to Sesame Street, but yeah, He's hey Ed, you've seen him. I've sent you pictures, but he's got red hair. Which, so if you thought no one could look more Irish than me, wait till you meet my son.
I really want to meet him someday.
Yeah.
I think you travel a lot. Now you can spend some quality time home with him. That is a plus to all this crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that part's been great. But how are you doing with everything?
I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm cleaning and cooking a lot. It's, fine.
yeah.
Uh, you know, um, waiting.
Watching a lot of Netflix?
Yeah, I watch a lot of Netflix. Binging through everything. A show that everybody talks about is Ozark, and I finally watched it. I can only watch it in small doses. It's too dark. Yes, you're hearing that from Ed Fernandez's voice.
From
You're right.
you?
It's too dark. I can't deal. Like, it's a great show. The acting is great.
Yeah.
Everything is great, but it is so tense. It is so dark that I can't deal with it. I watch it, but I can never binge it because it's just too bleak. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, it is heavy. I would say every hour is action. I mean, it's like, and I mean action emotionally. It's not that there's,
Yes. It's so
yeah,
emotionally, like you're on the edge of your seat. You don't know what's going to happen. There's violence going to erupt any minute. It's too much for me right now. I want happy stuff, so I'm watching Schitt's Creek. I'm bitching.
I picked up on that too. I'm on episode 5.
Okay, I know what everybody does. Everybody was talking about Schitt's Creek, and I said, okay, so I finally have time to watch it. Yes, it's a great show. It makes me laugh, and that's what I need.
Yeah, that's a really good show. I finished Ozark. I got into The Outsider. I got into Narcos Mexico. I'm done that. I have never been more unproductive as I've been for the past 8. I've literally watched Netflix, changed diapers, and played video games. You're looking at success.
But hope we get through, and I can meet your son.
Yes.
Come to the theater and show him. Are you going to show him your DVDs someday, or are they too adult for him?
So it's funny you say that. Now, why would you think I'd show him my DVD? No, I'm just kidding. No. It's funny you say that because about 2 hours ago, I think 11. He's very persistent right now. He's at the persistent age. He went into the drawer and must have been 10 times he took out Urinetown and threw it on the floor. And I put it back in. I said, "This is gold. Do not mess with this." And I put it back, and about 30 seconds later, he's back in, grabbing Urinetown. So he's in the climbing stage, and it's funny, today specifically, and we're talking today, he was digging into old Epac DVDs. So, yeah. But at some point, I'm sure I will, and I'm sure he'll poke fun at me and his old dad.
Didn't your dad say no matter what show you do for Nana's house, you take your shirt off?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my dad said, well, keep in mind, Ed, so during Superstar, my aunt was an Immaculate Heart of Mary sister, or nun. And she came and sat in the second row and proceeded to see me getting whipped, and Jordan Weinhold, like, putting blood down my chest and all this stuff.
I'll check it in black leather. Like,
yes,
leather
exactly. Now, I was a little naive in my 20s, and I didn't see anything wrong with this. I said, "Dad, it's fine. This is Ed's artistic take on Jesus Christ Superstar. This is art, Dad." And he's like, "But any show you're in," he's like, "South Pacific, the Marine had to take his shirt off. You're Jesus Christ Superstar. I get he was a carpenter, but did he own a shirt?" And then he's like,
"Wait a minute. I take umbrage with that. You had a beautiful linen suit you wore in that show. Yes, it was see-through, but you had."
Yeah, Ed, I wore it in the show until scene 4.
Hey.
Yeah.
Flaunt it, baby.
Yeah.
You got it, baby. Flaunt it.
That's right. So that was just 2. And then we did Streetcar, and I think in my boxers for half of that. And so my dad just, he noticed they theme. And he said, "Well, I just noticed every single show. No offense, son, but I'm sick of looking at you." So it just took, I said, so now I tell him, "Hey, Dad, come see me in a show now."
They paid money to see me. They paid money.
Yeah. So if I do a show there moving forward, I can tell my dad, "You can come see it now, because trust me, I will be fully clothed."
Oh my God. Oh my God. Funny. You were so big during Streetcar. It was, if you ever watch that tape, it's like, holy Toledo.
Ye-
I think you lived at the gym during Streetcar.
Yeah.
I remember you used to
Well,
go
you know what it
right
was?
to the gym to rehearsal and you'd be stinking.
Yes, I was very stinky. I had already, like, that was a point of my, before I traveled, I worked out like a lot. So until like 6, 7 years ago, I did. And I remember at that show, you told me you're like, Stanley's supposed to be a beast. Like, and I was like, okay. And you're like, nah, he's like an animal. Like he eats his food like this. And I was like, okay. So in my mind, I was just trying to be like, I was trying to be an animal. So I went to the gym at 6:30 in the morning and I did cardio. And then I went and I worked all day. And then I went and worked out with my buddies at the gym. And then I went straight to rehearsal. And then you and KO, I remember like when I would do the scenes, you would just recoil. You would run from me. And I'm like, hey, what's the problem? But it was just body odor. So yeah. You wonder why I was single.
Oh my God. Oh, Reilly, we can talk all night. Oh Lord. Well, I think we've talked enough. We'll have to edit the crap out of this anyway, as we're time. I think we talked for like an hour or so. But it was great talking to you. It was great talk. You know what? And let's do this off. We don't have to do this. We can just communicate like this anytime.
Yeah.
So we don't have to wait, for a chat show. We can talk like this anytime.
I would love that. I'm around. We can maybe we can watch an Ozark together.
I'm a man.